Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for not uploading videos the last couple days. We are getting hit with a pretty hard heat wave over here, at least I am in Canada. And, for one, I live in Canada. I'm much more used to the cold and I prefer the cold, so it's been hard to adjust. And I personally don't own an AC. I gave mine to my family so that they can sleep a little better. And also, I'm a capybara. I have fur, so it's even hotter for me in comparison to the rest of these people. So it's been hard to adjust, but I'm starting to finally adjust. I'm getting used to this level of heat, which means I'm more motivated to make videos again. Now, in today's video, I'm not really going to be speaking about anything directly about HSR necessarily. However, I kind of want to talk about how stupid gacha revenue is, right? Now, the reason I want to talk about this is because as of recent, there's been some gacha revenue numbers floating around. This happens every single month. I think it's some website called Sensor Tower or something like that, that people really use to cover mobile earnings across multiple of the most popular gacha games. And quite often, more often than not, the top three will usually be something like Love and Deep Space, HSR, and Genshin. Right. However, recently, Wuwa was able to actually, I think, be above HSR and Genshin, or just HSR. I don't remember which one it is. And of course, this is the first time Wuwa has beaten one of these games in quite a long time on this Sensor Tower thing, I guess. So now people are like going crazy about it and bringing it up, right? But why do people care about earnings? This isn't an opinion that I just suddenly got because suddenly, Wu was doing quite well with a collab. To be honest, I'm happy to hear that Wuwa made some good money. Maybe I'm not, to be honest, because of how fucking predatory that collab banner was. That's probably the main reason why they made that much money. But I digress, who cares? If Wuwa makes 40 million and then they make 10 million tomorrow, you're not going to see an increase or a decrease in the quality slash QOL that is being added to the game. And the same thing applies to HSR, the same thing applies to Genshin. In fact, the best place you can be in as a gacha game is to be owned by an incredibly greedy company. However, this company recognizes that they want to actually pursue greater revenue, and instead of just leaving their older projects, they actually try to improve it in search of this revenue. The two games that I mainly have in mind here, keep in mind they still make way more than enough money, I'm assuming. However, they're good examples of this in comparison to HSR and Genshin, being Wuwa and ZZZ. I think a lot of people who play the mainstream gacha games from Wuwa, and as well as a majority of Hoyo's gachas, would know and say that, ZZZ has the most quality put into it, ZZZ has the most love put into it, the animations just keep improving, and yada yada yada. And the same thing goes for Wuwa. A lot of people say that Wuwa is the mainstream gacha game that gets the most love, gets the most QOL, graphics keep improving, things keep improving. In comparison to other games, I can't believe it doesn't make this much more money in comparison to Genshin and HSR, right? That is the best place you can be in, when you are making enough money for your game to thrive, but not enough for the company to be satisfied, because then they will continuously try to continue improving the game, which leads to the actual players benefiting quite a lot. And of course, the devs still make money as well. Meanwhile, you look at something like Genshin and HSR, don't get me wrong, these games are improving. They're improving a lot more, I'd say, within the last year than they've ever improved before. You could say it's because of Wuwa, you could say it's because the game's getting older, you could say it's because of both, right? However, the point is, HSR, it's hard for HSR to actually go down to this level of Wuwa and ZZZ revenue, because the thing is, one, HSR is probably the most convenient of all these games on mobile, so when you're looking at things strictly from a mobile revenue perspective, yeah, they probably have the biggest advantage among games like Genshin, Wuwa, and ZZZ. However, not only this, it's just so easy and convenient even if you do play on PC or console. This game has auto battle, and unlike the other games that usually require a little more mechanical skill and not as much knowledge, this this game requires significantly more knowledge and zero mechanical skill in order to actually get good clears, right? So it's two entirely different games, and because of this game's convenience for lazier and older players, it makes a lot more money in comparison to all the other games. So, for example, last year, HSR made this game, HSR was Hoyo's highest revenue game. They made them like 500 million, I think, just off of calculating mobile revenue, which is incredibly high, considering that does not include PC nor console, right? But here's the thing, who cares? HSR can make only $5 to $10 million per month. You know what? At the end of the day, most games die over time. I'd say probably 2 to 3 years from now, I could see HSR maybe making 5 to 10 million per month instead of the huge numbers it does currently, because there would be much more gacha games in the market at this point, and possibly even HSR competitors finally, the same way Genshin has actual good competitors these days like Wuwa. Right? Because I feel like, personally, there isn't a real HSR competitor currently out there that is anywhere near the quality of HSR itself, which is why HSR kind of has a monopoly on the type of game it is. However, feel free to disagree if you think otherwise. But with that all being said, it still wouldn't matter. HSR would probably still be getting its new patches, it'd still be getting skins, it'd still be getting new characters and SPs. In fact, the game would have probably improved leaps and bounds after all this time. Enough for some people to be satisfied, maybe not. However, they would have improved the same way they've been improving the last year, despite the fact that they're not making anywhere near as much money as they used to, because it's still enough money for the game to thrive. The company obviously doesn't want the game to go to shit, because I imagine HSR is much easier of a game to maintain in comparison to games like ZZZ with their insane fluid animations, and Genshin, which is an open world, right? So this is one of their easiest games to maintain while making them the highest profit and highest revenue at the exact same time, which is just a recipe for easy money for this company. So this is what I mean when I say I don't understand revenue comparisons and all this shit. Who cares? To be honest, if you're like a Genshin fan, I promise you would probably prefer, if you truly knew how these companies work, to make significantly less money than you currently do, because this way the game would actually get more QOL updates and more things faster, because the devs would be more desperate in order to make more money off of the game after seeing that the revenue has fallen off more significantly in comparison to previous months/years, right? And I'd honestly say the same thing applies to HSR, right? I'm not saying that I want games to die. The player base could still remain the same. But especially these days, with money becoming more valuable because things in the world are becoming much, much more expensive, if people didn't spend as much money on these games as they used to, and they actually held back, and they just only spent money on very special occasions, and then you saw the revenue drop, I'd imagine that these devs would put in more effort for more things in this game, like skins, Nova Flares, SPs. They'd improve the story presentation, they'd maybe add more fluid animation, because, like, for example, keep in mind, I haven't played Genshin in quite a while. Genshin, I just don't think I can ever return to, because I feel like Wuwa is 10 times better than Genshin. I'm not trying to knock Genshin. You know, there's people who like Genshin. They like that type of story. They like the way Genshin is. I'm not one of those people who's trying to push tribalism, right? But the reality is, I much prefer Wuwa than Genshin, to the point where I can't play Genshin anymore because it feels so bad in comparison to Wuwa for me. But recently, I've seen like a few dialogues. I think it was Sitlali recently, from a story. And I was like, holy shit, right? Like, people were making fun of Genshin for having like the characters be completely idle during dialogue, I think 1 or 2 years ago, and talk about how shit it was, and how this game wasn't making any improvements on presentation, and how in comparison to Wuwa it was getting completely blown out of the water. And then I see like all these improvements in terms of how lively the character feels, right? Like how much they're moving around, how much they're talking, their personality is actually quite well expressed, right? To the point where I'm here thinking like, why can't we have this in HSR? You know, like, why doesn't HSR have this level of improvement in its dialogue options? Because in HSR, usually the characters will strike like 2 or 3 poses at max, and that's basically it. They won't actually be moving all that much. So that's just my opinion. I think arguing over gacha revenue is incredibly stupid, and you should actually want your gacha to not be making tens of millions every single month so they can be more motivated to make changes that the players actually want. This isn't me saying that you should genuinely hate slash spend less money slash quit the game if you're playing a game that makes, 30 million, 40 million every single month, like usually HSR and Genshin do. I'm not at all trying to say that. I'm just saying that people who do play these games shouldn't knock others who play other games that make, let's say, 10 million per month or slightly less, because that's still more than enough for these games to be maintained and thrive, and it's enough to so that the devs, don't get lazy. It's not enough for them, even though it's enough for the player base. So they try to continuously improve the game. So it's better in the end if you make a little less money than making too much, in my opinion. Right? Maybe that was a bunch of yap. Maybe it was. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to get my opinion out there. Love you all. Hope you all have a great day. Hope you all have a great night. Peace out.